Welcome back to the most news in the morning. You know, just days after helping President Obama pass the $787 billion economic stimulus bill, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and several other Democrats headed to Italy on your dime. Special Investigations Unit correspondent Drew Griffin is looking into this pricey overseas excursion. He joins us this morning. Hey, Drew.
Hi, Karen. You know, after so much congressional criticism of executive travel and what members of Congress, remember, were calling junkets by Wall Street bankers, some are asking if Congress isn't engaging in a do as I say, not as I do attitude when it comes to taxpayer-funded travel.
Shortly after passing the Reinvestment and Recovery Act and shortly after making this statement about struggling Americans,
the American people are feeling a great deal of pain.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi and 7 fellow Democrats in the House boarded a military charter like this government-owned Boeing 737 executive jet and flew off to Italy. Why, in a time of economic crisis, would the Speaker, who happens to be of Italian heritage, travel to Italy? The United States has no greater ally in NATO than Italy, the Speaker said in a statement, which is why the delegation looks forward to meeting with President Giorgio Napolitano and other Italian government officials. She also has been going to museums in Florence, receptions at night, and was even presented with the birth certificates of her grandparents by the head of the Italian Chamber of Deputies.
Surprised me with the birth certificate of my grandfather and my great-grandmother.
Wednesday, Speaker Pelosi, a Roman Catholic, and her husband Paul, also on the trip, had a private audience with the Pope. Her office would not release the entire Italian itinerary of the all-Democratic delegation due to security reasons. So what's the cost of her Italian trip to the taxpayers back home? We won't know yet. Congress gives its traveling members several weeks to file their expenses, to tell us what hotels they stayed in, to tell us who took their spouses or staff. But the government-owned Boeing executive jet doesn't fly cheap, about $10,000 an hour, according to the Air Force. 20 hours flying between Washington and Italy adds up to about $200,000. That is interesting news to the president of the U.S. Travel Association. For weeks now, Congress has chastised banks and bailout recipients for unnecessary trips and conferences. And Roger Dow says that has hurt the travel industry.
By demonizing or by sensationalizing travel, all you're doing is you're not hurting the businessman, you're hurting the bellman, the maid, the town that counts on that travel for taxes.
And Karen, right now there's no shortage of congressional trips going on. One in Gaza, another in Brussels and Paris, and CNN caught a group of 6 House members on their way to India last Friday. They were going to mark the 50th anniversary of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s journey to study Gandhi. On that trip, Martin Luther King III, Andrew Young, musician Herbie Hancock, and others. Both the U.S. State Department and Congress picking up the bill for that India trip. You know, Martin Luther King III, who along with his siblings sold his father's papers for $32 million 2 years ago, was a guest of the State Department. He called it the trip of a lifetime. Here in the travel industry is saying, hey, if it's good for you, Congress, maybe some of our executive trips are worth going on as well. Karen?
Right, because it's up for debate. Are these just, desires to get to see these exotic locations, or is there real business of the country being done, and how do you determine that?
Yeah, and that, I think, the critics say is a hard sell at a time when the country itself is in such economic turmoil. Why aren't these congressional members back in their districts trying to help their constituents through foreclosures, through unemployment, etc.? No, instead they are flying to Italy and India.
Great stuff. Drew Griffin, always great to hear your pieces. Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Coming up now in the half hour and breaking news.